There are plenty of things happening that are immoral. They're not right. They're not sound. And more of those activities are happening. The unfortunate part is it's beginning to affect a lot of you. More every single day, I see a lot of Christians who are fully adopting some of the violence that's in the world. They're fully adopting it. And it's almost like a trick. But I tell you this, if you take a side with the world, you're not in the kingdom. Okay, you're not here to take a side with the world. You're already on a side. You're on the side of righteousness. You know, it's not very good to pick a side among Babylon when the Lord said, come out of her, my people, that you be not partakers of her plagues. All right? Or be not partakers of her sins, that you partake not of her plagues. So anybody who is steeped in these kingdoms of men are going to undergo what happens to them. That means if you're a Christian, right, and you are deeply embedded with the world, that could be mentally consumed by the world. You will undergo the same plagues that will come upon the earth. For a Christian, they are immune from the plagues that come upon the earth for the sake of men. Do you guys understand that? The Bible is clear. Christ is clear. Those who are part of the world, those who are part of the sins of the world, that means taken aside, right? There's no righteousness in violence, none. It doesn't matter what looks good or what looks wrong. There's no right side in violence. Any of the Christians who are part of that, right? That's partaking in the sins of the world. And if that's going to be any Christian, they're going to partake of the plagues. It does not mean the person is condemned. It means the person is about to have a very miserable life. And there are some pretty awful things happening to a lot of people. Every day now I have conversations with folks who are broken, distraught. It's a lot of people losing family members. This week alone, I have addressed at least 72 people who've lost their spouses. 72 who lost their spouses. Not their mother, not their dads, their spouse, their other half. These people are broken, and they're Christians, and they never thought that would happen. They never considered a life without their spouse. More and more of these things are happening. Why? Because we live in a world that is incredibly seductive. In other words, not so much in some immoral or evil way, but it draws you in, and you begin to believe that life is just like men say it is. That's what you begin to believe. When that happens, when you believe that life is just like men say it is, you are full of contradictions. We become full of contradictions. We become unsettled. I know a lot of Christians right now are tired of the internal storm. How many of you are tired of that internal storm? It's almost like an internal storm. I remember the days when I went through these internal storms, constantly trying to grab hold of righteousness, right? But having to grapple with the world. And it almost seemed like in order to live in this world, you could not fully embrace biblical things. Some of you know precisely what I'm talking about, right? You know precisely what I'm talking about. But it's also the time when I began to learn about the trust of the Lord, right? Is it easy? You better believe it's not. It is not easy, no matter what anybody says, right? When you have experience separating yourself from the world, it is not easy. It is downright frightening. And thank God that some of you have a good foundation in Christ, enough that you have broken your severs and ties to this world, right? Doesn't mean you don't draw a paycheck from the world. That's not what that means. It means that you no longer dive into the practices of men. You are no longer trying to belong to men in the world. You're not trying to have position among them, but you stand for something different now. But it's also time that those of you who have made it to that mark, that you vigorously and persistently teach others. Demonstrate to them the ways of the Lord. Kindness is being depleted all over the earth. People are calling wrong right and right wrong. Discernment is becoming clouded and polluted. It really is. clouded and polluted. And I guess I'm coming on today, this afternoon, to encourage you guys, don't forget those things. Don't forget who you are. And never forget the people right around you are suffering. They're suffering like, listen, one of our problems with discernment is we are so much in the practice that if we don't see it, we don't know about it. Right? And of course, you guys know I'm somewhat of an oddball. I don't have to be prompted for everything. But I'm telling you, there are people around you that are suffering. So I want to tell you this afternoon. Don't cut your hearts off. Don't do it. Don't cut your hearts off from your brothers and your sisters. There are too many people suffering in silence. Do you know that? Anybody know what suffering in silence is? That's when your life is literally going down the drain, right? But you haven't said a word. And because you don't say a word, those without discernment will never know you're in trouble. They'll never know it. Somehow we've got to change that. That internal unction that you guys get, don't ignore it. Don't let the words of men stop you from sowing into somebody else's life. Please don't do that. Because that's precisely what's happening. You know how you get this unction internally? You may see somebody walking down the street or something, you know him, you say, you know what? I think that person's not doing too well. I think they need some help. But then the words of men hit your mind. Maybe some statement you heard or some argument about the border. And then it's almost like a satanic voice will speak to you and say, nah, they're just trying to get more. They need to learn to manage what they have. Don't be one of those people. Well, I'm telling you, your Father in heaven is going to be just that way to you. In your hour where you need mercy, grace, because some of you will not need financial things. You're going to need your health. And if you set yourself up not to sow any merciful thing upon anybody else because you've refused to listen to that voice of the Lord, mercy is going to be withheld from you and your hour that's going to make or break your situation here on earth. Don't set yourself up to be like that, please. Please don't do it. Please don't do it. There are too many people that they're hurting in this. You know, I know a lot of people who they love pep rallies. I don't do pep rallies. I don't do that. I don't believe in pepping people up and getting them in a certain mood so that they start doing things. I don't believe in that. I believe in love itself. I believe in God's discernment He has gifted all of us with. I believe that we know things that nobody has ever told us. And I believe that we can perceive things of one another that nobody ever spoke. But as the world is increasing in its hatred and violence and lascivious acts, so are many in the body of Christ closing their hearts off to one another. Skeptical. Can't trust him. Satan speaks with accusation. He's always going to point out a fault. Don't live your life by the faults of somebody else. See them with eyes of love. Understand that all of us have faults, but people are in trouble. Case in point, Tuesday. Somebody told me a story Tuesday that I've heard too many times. A person had not been able to make their mortgage payments on their homes. They'd not been able to. Their spouse died. 5 months into the home, the person is, not only do they have that eviction notice hovering over their heads, right, or that foreclosure, but they're dealing with a spouse that's gone after 46 years. That's like losing everybody you know. When you have a spouse like that of 46 years, that's everybody you know. That spouse is everybody you know. Everybody. And when they die, so do most of your dreams, so does most of your motivation and everything else, because that spouse becomes a part of you. The spouse died. This individual was dealing with severe pressure. This gentleman was a Christian, a kind Christian. Listen to me. Kind, with grandchildren, very kind. All this individual needed, one of the guy's brothers, I'm not sure if it's a stepbrother or just a blood brother. The guy was dealing with all these pressures. He never received any help. He always encouraged other people, but no one knew of his struggle. The struggle was so much. Cardio infarction took place, and he died too. He died with his 2 grandbabies in the house, and they were the ones that called the ambulance. But it was a massive, massive heart attack he had. No doubt, because everybody said when he lost his spouse, he changed, dealing with the other pressures, right? That's all he talked about was not only did he lose his spouse, but now he's losing his home. And everything he knew was in that home. Here's the part. No one knew it. His family didn't know it. No one knew it. I bet you a Christian knew it. The brother or stepbrother, they were kind of distant because of stuff that happened in the past. This guy needed $400 to make a difference in him sleeping a night's peaceful rest or losing his home, because it was not a big home. This guy was one of those individuals who was, by no means was he rich, right? And a lot of things that he lived off was he compensated with the land. But he did buy things. $400 would have made the difference in this guy's life. $400. Somebody was going to foreclose his home for $400. Are you kidding me? $400, and nobody knew it. People throw that money away every day. People go play bingo. This weekend, I guarantee you, it's going to be a lot of Christians who are going to throw thousands of dollars away in gambling. Christians, I'm just being real with you. I know they're going to do it. They're going to gamble and throw thousands of dollars away. They're going to take somebody out to eat to have a conversation that could have fed 50 people. Folks, without discernment, what can we do? Nothing. But if we ignore that discernment the Lord gives us, by the way, if the Lord puts something on your heart, if you start knowing something about somebody, who do you think put it there? You think it's automatic? Discernment is your Father in heaven telling you what the real deal is. That's what discernment is. It is not you somehow deciphering a situation. No, it's your Father in heaven telling you what a real situation is. And when he speaks in those tones of love, because he does not command us to give to anybody, because out of his own mouth, he loves a cheerful giver. He's not going to command us to give to anybody like that. He can give us a hint that somebody's in trouble. And if we continue to ignore it, then what? And these are folks right around us. Don't let your heart be turned off. You're going to see it with your own eyes, sir. You're going to find out something that's going to turn your stomach in due time. But folks, please, you got to watch in these days. You have to watch the tongues of the vipers who will teach you one thing: how to turn away from somebody else. Listen to me. If somebody teaches you to turn your back on somebody, how can that person teach you any biblical thing? You're armored on the front side. You're not armored on the back side. You can face anything. You're sent as sheep among wolves. And among those wolves are the prey of the wolves. And those people who are caught by the wolves are crying out. You're the only one that can hear that cry. You were put on this earth in answer to somebody's prayer, because somebody said, Lord, please send somebody that can reach these people. Every time one of these small sheep are among wolves and they die of horrible circumstances, most often they die with a prayer. Lord, send somebody to tell your message that no one else die like me. That's how they pass away, with a tender heart, thinking about everybody else but themselves, asking that the Lord send someone. And you know what he did? He had you born on this earth. You know what Satan is doing? Instead of you being the one, being the answer to the prayer so many need, Every time you would walk forward to answer that call, Satan speaks and says, don't trust it. Don't trust it. Don't trust it. He's always telling people the waters are rough. Always. And what do we do when the waters are rough? We do not go in the water. Not knowing that you were made to go into rough waters. To walk on the water without a boat. That's what you were sent for. To do the impossible in the face of so many. That's what you were meant for. See, that's a spiritual knowing within yourselves that you will never be able to justify nor figure out. It eats at you. You know that the Lord's word is true. But you ask yourself, how come none of it's working through me? I'll tell you why. Because you're not going into the water. If you had scuba gear on, right? You would never know that scuba gear works perfectly until you go in the water. So you're on the beach with scuba gear, but you've not entered into the water. And you're asking, where's this feeling of weightlessness? When does that come? Well, it's never going to come because you're still on the beach. Because Satan has convinced you, don't go into the waters, you can't trust it. Not knowing you've been sent to go into rough waters. Hopefully that makes sense to somebody. When you go forward with responsibility. Not haphazardly. Don't do anything haphazardly. Do it responsibly. There's a key to a cheerful giver who gives unto his neighbor, unto people who really need. There's a key to them, why they can be cheerful in the first place. They don't do things haphazardly, but they know the condition of their own flock. And do you know that was a command by our Father? We are to know the condition of our own flock. I do not subscribe to half of what this world subscribes to. When it says, well, if you don't have enough for this bill or that bill, just give it to the church. I don't believe in that. How can I rob a power company and give it to a cause where somebody needs it when you promise to pay that bill in the first place? They've already rendered service. You cannot break one oath to make another. You cannot murder on the left hand and bless on the right hand. You can't do it. You cannot steal on the left hand and give with the right hand. This is not the days of Robin Hood. You can't do it. Everything you do charitably, freely of your heart, you do with great responsibility and with a knowing. Knowing first where it came from. Your father or some other motivation, but you know where it came from. Hopefully it is your father. You go forward with all faith and purpose everything you do. Please, but please don't cut those folks off around you. Time to stand up, utilize that discernment. And if you don't know if the other person, if you have an unction about somebody, right? Because I've done this plenty of times. Having an unction about someone, but I'm not sure. You know what I'll do? I'll go up to the person. I'll start a conversation. I'll do it in a heartbeat. And then, sure enough, it pops out. And I'm already prepared for that situation. Do you guys understand? See, I'm not one of those, if I'm not sure, I'm going to walk away. Well, I'm not sure I'm going to walk away. Nope, but I'm not doing that. When I'm not sure, that's when I have to verify. When my discernment is low in certain places, that's when I have to verify. I have to be sure, so I just go up and ask the person. I'll just make it plain. But if anything comes in my head and causes me to accuse the person, I will toss it out quickly. I don't listen to such things. Oh, don't do so-and-so for such and such, because if you do, it's stop. I don't permit such things. What about those who, people who talk? There was a person who talked about me like a dog. Then they had a dire need. And it just so happened in that moment, we could help. We did help without hesitation. See, that's how the Lord works. Just like that, right? But what about those folks around you? What about the folks in your neighborhood? When's the last time, guys, You went down to your neighborhood kitchen where they feed people. Just asked them, can I do anything? Can I give you something? When's the last time? When's the last time you looked into those charitable things in your community? When's the last time? I'll tell you, the love in people is just drying up. Violence is breaking out. The time of the harvest is right now. And we're not talking about getting rich and all this stuff. That's not what we're talking about. Nor are we talking about emptying your pockets. We're talking about acts of love in a time where people are chopping love off. They don't want to love their neighbor. They want to shut all their doors and windows. They want a big booming voice from the sky to say, you're going to make it through. Everything is okay. I'm telling you, the way out of the current crisis is to love even more. With that commitment, you become an overcomer.